Hello. I appreciate that. You make me feel very special, and I've done nothing but show you a video. We can only go up from here, right? Let me just say that it is not lost on me that everyone that is here today is very intentional in supporting the brilliance, the beauty, and the capacity of all things feminine. It is also not lost on me as a woman and as a mother and a wife and a creator that this specific event today, this gathering today, is an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about three things during the lunch hour. The first is stories. My work as a artist and a historian is to create experiences and to tell stories that are lesser known. So typically when you come to an exhibit that I offer, either you've heard very little or nothing at all. I love that, right? Job security, right? But today I want to talk a little bit about my story briefly for those who are unaware of my journey, which is why I shared the video. I'll talk about Cathay's story. That's the primary focus of the talk. And then we'll talk a little bit at the end about our collective story, our shared history, which is really relevant now, really relevant. So 7 years ago, I went to the eye doctor for a routine eye visit. Now, keep in mind, I am a person who has always worn eyeglasses, always worn corrective lenses. And in kindergarten, when they test your vision and they send you home with a little note, you're in the clear. Or, oh, honey, oh, honey. They sent me home with not one, but two notes. The first one said, get this child glasses. And the second one said, fast. So I grew up with full pigtails and huge, as we would say, Coke bottle glasses. And it became a part of my identity. And I was tall and lanky. I was literally 5 feet tall in elementary school. I've been this height since I was 14, and awkward and all the things, but I knew that I had a superpower. I was smart. I think that every child should have that one thing that they can call their own. Because when you attach your worth to something of value and substance, everything else fades away. So things got better. You know, I grew up in the 80s, so glasses got smaller. Thank goodness. The bifocals kind of faded away. And that was my identity, the glasses. So when I went to the eye doctor for this visit, it wasn't unlike any other visit, except it was. The eye doctor I'd been seeing for about 8 or 9 years wasn't there. There was some type of family situation. So when I arrived, as many people do, hurried, fumbling through a pocketbook, I literally walked up to the counter and the assistant said, "Oh, I forgot to call you." And I was like, ugh, what? And I'm just thinking, I just rushed all the way across town. Like, this is happening. Your doctor is out of town, but we have a backup. It's a good friend. He specializes in unique challenges of the eye and diseases, and this will be great. He can also qualify to do regular routine checkups. And I was like, okay, all right. Now keep in mind, this is maybe late 30s. I am heavily, heavily in this zone of working for other people and all things government and corporate, and very much like hurry, 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 eat in the car. This was the life. So as she's talking to me, I'm thinking, okay, we just have to do this because I can't reschedule the appointment. So have you ever been in a season or situation where the thing you were banking on falls through, and the thing that you receive just happens to be the very thing that you needed? The doctor who saw me runs tests. I'm asking him, why is this taking so long? What's going on? It's just a routine check. He said, have you had any eye dryness? I said, oh, I'm so glad you asked. I have a lot. But you know, I'm on my computer about 12 hours a day and I'm doing this and he said, huh. So then he asked me, do you ever have any irritation with your eyes? And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I do kind of have a little irritation, yeah, here and there, but it's only after sitting in front of the computer and justifying everything. So he asked me a series of questions, and he says, okay, Chloe, I want to share something with you. And I'm thinking, I literally just need eye drops because I have a 2 o'clock. Let's wrap this thing up. He says, I'm going to send you, writing feverishly, I'm going to send you to a colleague of mine who's a specialist for degenerative eye diseases. This is when I stop and I come back into my body. And I said, wait, what? Chloe, let me show you something. He takes me to the opposite room. He shows me on the screen, and it looks like a steel Caribbean drum. And I said, what is that? He says, Chloe, that's your eye. Have you ever heard of Stargardt disease? And I say, no, what is that? He goes on to tell me that it's a genetic form of macular degeneration. And that's what he believes I have. That accounts for the dry eye, it accounts for the fuzziness of vision, it even accounts for some delayed forms of difficulty driving at night, which I had been experiencing, frankly, for almost 10 years. So what did I do? What most type A people do. I just stopped driving at night. No problem there. This is a problem. I'm good. We'll make adjustments. Women often make adjustments. So he schedules the appointment. Of course, you have to wait 2 weeks because that's always a thing. And the whole 2 weeks leading up to the actual eye exam, I am on pins and needles, just like really nauseous, thinking about this appointment. They go in, I'm there for 2 hours. They come back to actually confirm I have Stargardt disease. It's rare, it's genetic, it skips 4 generations, so I'm the lucky recipient. Yay! I'm sure I have the same joy as a person who just won the gift bag. And then I asked them, as type A people do, what can I do about this? This is really heavy and really inconvenient because, like I literally said that, this is very inconvenient for me because I don't know much about this and I have a 2-year-old daughter and I run a business, and my business is literally working with people in government and the arts. It's all visual. So what can I do? He said, Chloe, there's no cure. I said, but by no cure, what do you really mean? There is no cure. There are some studies going on right now with some pharmaceutical companies and some universities, but it is my understanding that there is no cure. There's nothing that you can take. This simply is what it is. So I asked him 3 questions. The first one is, am I going to lose my vision completely? He says, yes. The next question is, do we know when? He says, no. The third question was, do we know how? He said, well, that I can't answer for you. I was like, great. He said, you will lose your central vision first. It'll become very, very fuzzy and grainy. And then after you lose your central vision, you will have this kind of expansiveness that spreads to take over your peripheral vision. So now everything is fuzzy and grainy, almost as if like when you open a pillow and things just gonna fly in the air. And then you will go colorblind, and then it will go dark. I said, so about that going dark part, we have no idea. He said, no. Oh, but wait, I can tell you this. So there are two strains of your condition. The first one usually takes your vision between the ages of 12 and 16. I said, wow. And I'm 38, so clearly that's not me. And my 38-year-old self is sitting in this office, and I'm just like, huh. I said, so I have, he said, yes, you have the lesser known strain. And while I don't know exactly how that will turn out for you, it will be either one of two ways. You will either have a general gradual fading to black. I said, okay. I said, well, what's the other part? He said, or you'll wake up and it'll be completely dark. I said, well, my vote's for the, the first point you offered, if these are my options. So as I sat there, he was talking, and honestly, it was like a Charlie Brown episode. It was just like womp, 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 because I go inward immediately. And I'm thinking about all the things, right? My work, my family, my 2-year-old daughter that we prayed and prayed and prayed for, and not seeing her grow up as a young woman, perform, create, live, engage, college, if that's her journey, marriage or partnership, if that's her journey. All the things, everything is flipping through my head, almost like a Marvel comic book. I'm just sitting there and I can't even move. Now, because I was diagnosed in my hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana, which is relatively small, 250,000 people, everyone knows everyone. And before I had my own business doing cultural arts events that were fueled and inspired by history, I worked in government. I was executive assistant for the mayor's office, and I managed programs of a citywide scale. So I was very, very visible in my hometown. And this gentleman goes on to tell me as I grabbed my purse and began to pull myself together, as we often do, right? And you got to do this when you pull yourself together. And I head to the door and he said, Chloe, you know, I want you to be encouraged. I said, I want to be encouraged. I do. I said, you got anything for me? We're sending people to the moon. You told me there's no cure. Like, he said, well, I don't know you, but I know of you. And I've seen your work and I've seen you do all these things in the community. Literacy programs for kids, programs for moms, working in the arts, working in the mayor's office. You've been quite busy, young lady, and you seem to be an optimist. I would encourage you to contact a therapist for you and your family because things will be shifting. And, you've done a lot. Just go ahead and file for disability and ride this thing out. And as I left, I shook his hand and I went to the car where my husband, Sean, was waiting to pick me up. And his voice echoed in my head, ride this thing out. I was 38. I get in the car, and I'm not an overly emotional person. It's kind of the byproduct of growing up with brothers. You show weakness, you go down. And we're all tall. I'm one. So I got in the car, and I think I scared my husband because he'd never seen that kind of raw emotion. And he said, how'd it go? And I began immediately crying and sobbing and swallowing snot, just like a Lifetime movie situation during the holidays. And I think it kind of freaked him out. But he didn't say anything. He said, wait, what happened? And I tell him through my tears, it's bad. It's really bad. I'm going blind. There's no cure. It's a whole thing. And we got Zoe, we got this. And he's like, okay, back up. Breathe. And I tell him, And then I do the thing that we often do, sometimes as females. I try to give them an out. I tell them, you didn't sign up for this. This is a real thing. Blindness is real. It's a disability. All the things. You're like, and then he begins to tell me and recount all the things we've come through because we met in college. Chloe, we've had no money. We've been in scarcity. We've had highs. We've had lows. We literally evacuated Hurricane Katrina 2 years after you graduated. We've had loss of loved ones and friends and all the things. We will get through this. And then I tell him, yeah, but in those situations, I could always fall upon my physicality, my well being, or the illusion of safety that quote unquote being non disabled or whole brings. I can't do that now. I don't know how to do this. And then he said, but we'll do this little by little. So I said, okay, give me a minute to process. To quote my dear grandmother, you get a few minutes, you cry, you do the whole thing, and you get back up. And you literally pull up your boots and your girdle. There was no need for a girdle then. It was a different time. It was a simpler time. So I go home. He takes Zoe, goes to my mom's house, stays there, and I do all the things that I haven't done in years, or frankly, ever. I literally cry, appeal, ask, do this motion right here because I feel like you have to do this when you get tough news. I go through all these things, so much so that I don't even know when I fell asleep. I just know I wake up at 3 a.m. 3 is significant for me. I was born on the third day. It's always about threes for me in my life. And I begin crying again, but these are really, really gentle tears and tears of gratitude because I am reminded of something that the doctor said. The first strain of this condition means that you lose your vision between the ages of 12 and 16. And then I think about all the things I was allowed to experience between 12 and 16, being active in student government. I mean, because student government, and the band and my friends and members and of loved ones at church and in travel and all these things. And I think about college, backpacking in Europe, my programs, living and going to school in New Orleans, which is the best place to go to college, frankly. All the things. I see the second line. I see all these rites of passage. I see my wedding. And I see my grandfather who had just died when I got this diagnosis. And all these people that have just sown into me and all these stories of the ancestors. And I could no longer feel sorry for myself. I had a responsibility to show up because I had been given so much. It was in that moment I consciously made the decision to move forward. And as a family, a year later, we made history here in Denver. If I had listened to the suggestion of the doctor to ride this thing out, I think sometimes about all the things that we just saw that would have come to be. We would not have had the largest piece of public art created by persons navigating disability right now, right next to Denver Central Market, the Holding Hope mural. The #2 visited mural in Denver, which is saying something because there's a lot of great murals out here. It was my first one. We wouldn't have the only accessible I voted sticker in the country that we partnered with the Denver Elections Division to do. It has Braille and low vision friendly colors. It's still the only one in the country. We wouldn't have all these exhibitions, the partnership with History Colorado, Denver Art Museum, all these places. I would not have been to 9 countries and 24 states in over 6 years, carrying the message of history and shared history and overcoming the proposed narrative if I had filed for disability and sat right there. Now, you may be wondering, how is this relevant? It's relevant because this is how I came to study Cathay. About 2 or 3 years in, when I was here doing work, I came across the story of Cathay. And as someone who studied history in undergrad, I was completely blown away that one, I'd never really heard about the Buffalo Soldiers. I'd never heard also about Cathay Williams. And I was completely mesmerized by this human and their capacity and their willingness, known or unknown, to create their own narrative. And I felt this beautiful kinship to her. And I felt that I had to study her. And the more I began to study her, the more I realized that I was literally, unbeknownst to me, following in her footsteps. So last year, I spent 10 months in Trinidad, Colorado, serving, woohoo, shout out to Trinidad and Margie, serving as artist in residence for the Historic East Street School. And I was actually working on my Cathay exhibit. I came back to Denver for a summer show. And during the summer show that took place at the McNichols building, it was called Vibrant Accessibility. And it was the first show done in the city's history by everyone who was visually impaired. And we anchored the show. And at the show, I was talking to a dear colleague, and I was actually showcasing that beautiful postal bag during that show. And the colleague walks up and says, "You're in Trinidad now, right?" "Yeah." "Hmm, you're something else. Are you following Cathay?" And I said, "What?" And then he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Why would you ask me that? I'm there. We're doing programming in the community. It's a residency." He said, "Aren't you studying Cathay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm 2 years in. It's fascinating. There are some major gaps, but that's not uncommon with people of color, you know." So we talk about that. And then he says, "Huh, well, she reportedly transitioned in Trinidad. All right, take care." I was like, "What?" So then I was just like obsessed. You get the news and you're just like, this changes everything. And you have to do it in that voice. So I went home and I'm just like voraciously trying to find everything. I'm listening to podcasts and reading critiques and all these things. And I'm just like completely enamored with Cathay. And I find out that where I was actually living for 10 months and serving through the arts is 3 blocks from where Cathay lived in Trinidad. So we create the show. It opens at the Trinidad History Museum in September. Cathay was born in 1844. 1844. She was born in Independence, Missouri, ironically, because she chased freedom her entire life. And she was born to an enslaved mother and a free father. So if your mother was enslaved, then honey, you were enslaved. And she worked as a cook of sorts, kind of house slave. You can take that for whatever you think it means. But she primarily did things around the plantation, the Johnson plantation. Well, move and shift energy into 1861 when the Civil War has started and Union troops come to the plantation, burn the plantation to the ground, and do what was common then, a sweeping movement to collect living contraband. Because in this season, enslaved people are property. So they take them under the guise of potentially giving some of the spoils of war or some support to the plantation owners. And of course, they're like, yeah, go do the thing. We burn this to the ground. Like, what choices do we have? So Cathay is captured. She's 17. And while she's captured, they pull her to the side and essentially say, we need you to be a laundress, a nurse, and occasionally a cook. To which she reportedly replies, I don't know how to do any of that. Maybe we can work on that cooking situation. So for the next 3 years, she travels with Union troops all across the country. And she is a quick study. She is learning all the things. And she moves kind of up the ranks, the invisible ranks, and starts working for Sheridan. Well, she spends a good bit of time in New Orleans, where I lived for almost 10 years, right? And I'm following her travels. She goes to DC. She also goes to a place that a lot of people just don't go, frankly, unless you have a really random connecting flight. She goes to my hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana, and she bears witness to the Red River campaign and rebel gunfire. And she is at the Red River in Shreveport, literally 5 minutes away from where I had my office as a consultant, and 10 minutes away walking from my childhood home. As I allow that to settle in my bones, I'm like, what are the odds? No one's going to Shreveport unless they're just passing through to Dallas. There's some great people there, by the way. Let me just say that. And I'm just like, wow, this is so This is so powerful. So I decided to make this show a show that opens in Trinidad and travels to a few of the places she actually lived. And as I began to do more research, I learned that she serves in this capacity until the war is over. And then they're telling her things like, it's over, you're free. But here's the thing with that, there was no infrastructure in place, there was nothing for free people to do. So as a woman in 1866, she's faced with this decision. Do I go back into what I know, where I can earn a pension, potentially, have a safe place to sleep, and have 3 guaranteed meals a day and earn a little bit of money? Or do I make it on my own? One of the persons actually was reportedly gave birth to this notion that now that you're free, you can go back to wearing dresses. Cathay hated dresses. Growing up on a plantation, people who had dresses often got burned because of the work they were doing in the cauldrons and all those things. So she was like, oh, that's no real incentive. So she makes a decision to try to go back into the military. But there's one issue. Women are not allowed. Women aren't even really wearing pants a lot in most places in the country. And in my mind, I believe she took this notion of self survival to a whole nother level because she knew that once she was on her own, let's be truthful, the options for her were beyond limited. The odds of her actually surviving were very, very low. So she contacts one of her cousins and a dear friend, and she tells them reportedly, this is what I'm going to try to do. And they support her in it. She cuts her hair off. She was 5'9" and 140 pounds. That added to the believability of her being in the military. She shows up and she enlists. It's 1866. And everyone was just like, how could she enlist? No one's doing thorough checks in 1866. This is a ragtag situation. You could literally roll up with 2 animals and like a parachute and say, I want to fly a plane. Like, no one's doing that. No one's checking. So it was relatively easy to get on. Also, medical examinations weren't required back then. So she's on and she's serving. And as I'm reading about her story and researching her story, I'm thinking, I'm a woman. There's a lot that women have to navigate on the daily. Those things that we share with others and those things we just keep to ourselves, honey. And I'm wondering to myself what it must have felt like to conceal your identity in that way, your gender in that way, for almost 3 years. 3 years. From where you are right now, sitting right now, close your eyes with me. Close your eyes with me. Think about that. Go on a journey with me. You enlist. You're posing as a gentleman. This is your way of controlling some resemblance of your future. And think about marching miles and miles and miles with very poor shoes. Think about your physical being, your body, the aching. Think about navigating the monthly blessing we all have in certain seasons of life. Thinking about the uncertainty, even in the military, of being found out at every turn. Think about the winter and these places where she was stationed. Outside St. Louis and in New Mexico, harsh, harsh winter. Soldiers slept 2 to a bed, head to foot. Think about that at night, sometimes losing sleep, wondering, will they find out? Do they already know? Think about contracting smallpox, not once, but 3 times, and random other infections, and being hospitalized 5 times during your 3-year engagement. Think about the backbreaking labor. You're protecting settlers that don't look like you and don't really care for you. You are being positioned to create resistance to your indigenous sisters and brothers when you have only barely escaped a fate far worse in many situations and seasons. Think about that. Open your eyes. It was around this time that Cathay came to the realization that maybe the military was not for her. She didn't have a great deal of choices, but she had been quite ill. Her body was breaking down. She was already feeling the effects of arthritis, and she decided that it was time for the season to shift. So she went back to the same doctor who had examined her on numerous occasions and reportedly outed herself. I would imagine it was something like this. Hello, hello. Are you feeling well? No, I'm feeling fine. Oh, by the way, I'm a lady. I'm out of here. This is over. So I would imagine that they cared very deeply for her because she received what is really uncommon, an honorable discharge. Yes, an honorable discharge. Now, some historians and critics will often say, when they hear Cathay Williams stories, they will often say people romanticize Cathay. They make her out to be this really fierce, and there's always a stance like this, a fierce warrior princess and all these things. And to that I say, these are usually people who don't have ovaries, because whether she was fighting or not, she didn't see combat. The fact that she walked over 1,000 miles, give or take, and was in the trenches in these horrific conditions and with this uncertainty means, by my measure, that she was extraordinary. Extraordinary. So she leaves and takes her papers with her, and she turns up in New Mexico, where she worked for a little while as a cook. And then she comes on up to where? Out of all the places she's traveled, Colorado. She's in Pueblo for a while. She starts a business. She's working. She meets a gent. They get married. It's beautiful. Oh, but wait until it's not, because he was a fool, honey. He robs her, takes her horses, her watch, her gold watch, and takes all the money she's been saving. She literally wakes up one day and all these things are gone. Well, apparently, he didn't know the woman he married. Cathay tracks him down, has him arrested, and officially says, "This is where we stop." She then moves from Pueblo to Trinidad. She's been to Trinidad a couple of times. She said, the people are really kind here. I will do well here. She works as a seamstress for a number of years. People engage with her. They're very kind to her. This is a supportive place for her. And she still finds capacity along the way to engage in work and support other persons who are newly freed and as they come through Trinidad. This is where her health begins to deeply decline at this point. She is hospitalized because she has discomfort in her foot. She wakes up to find all 10 of her toes have been amputated and half of her foot. Now, if I wake up in the hospital and they've taken out a wisdom tooth, I'm going to have so many questions. Imagine having discomfort, passing out, waking up, and literally half of your foot is missing, as well as your toes. It is during this time, because she's made so many beautiful relationships in Trinidad, that her friends and colleagues tell her, you should file for disability. Like, honestly, do this thing. So she does. She does. She's also partially deaf at this point. And she submits two requests to the Pension Bureau. But she doesn't say anything about the fee. She simply says deafness. But if you think about it, that should have qualified her, right? They deny her both times. She shares the information. Her friends are like, oh gosh, well, did you tell? I would imagine they said, did you tell them about the fee? Like, the fee's a whole situation. You got to rock with a cane. She submits one more request. And this time she shares the feat. She's been examined 5 times by white male doctors, and they go on record as saying there was no way they could find any absolute, I'm just blown away by it as I say it to you right now. There was no way they actually could find any trace of any disability. She has diabetes. She has the foot situation. She's going deaf. She has issues in her lower back. This deeply hurt Cathay. What they were unwilling to say, and what we can all frankly assume, is you served illegally. You are a woman. You are not worthy of this pension, even though you were honorably discharged. Now, depending on who you follow, reportedly about 9 months or so after that, this news is such a deep, stirring blow to Cathay that she goes back to Trinidad and she's made great friends with the nuns. She falls ill. They care for her temporarily and she passes away. There are several people in and around Trinidad that deeply believe that she's actually buried in the Trinidad cemetery, although no one knows where. But here's the beautiful thing about research, right? In preparation for this talk, just over the past several months, I literally read and heard that there is substantial evidence that Cathay was deeply disappointed in that denial, but she turned up in Pueblo. A few years later, someone donates a box of materials and records in Vail in 2010, and in the box, they actually see a list of names from this physician's office, reportedly, and there's someone in there who has the name of Cathay Williams, or as she inverted it when she served, William Cathay. And they too are missing all of their toes and a portion of their foot. And they are 5'9", and they are black. And I'm like, this is all I need to know. This is this human. And that actually places her back in Pueblo and has her leaving, transitioning, dying in 1911. 1893, 1911. This is why research is so important. This is why stories are so important. So that's Cathay's existence. It was a very short life. It was a very tough life. But I was really struck by the fact that she just kept going. She kept going. Burn my home to the ground, take away my family, take me away, work with you for 3 years, uncompensated. In the war, I'll keep going. I witnessed warfare firsthand, I'll keep going. I'm free now, I have no resources, I have no family, I'll keep going. Oh, what you say? I have limited options? There's nowhere to go, there's nowhere to work. I just have this one cousin and a friend. Oh, okay, I'll keep going. I'm gonna enlist in the military. This is gonna be great. Oh wait, I got smallpox. This kinda sucks. Oh, where are we walking? Oh, it's really cold. I keep going. I get out, I work, I find someone who's supposed to be a life partner. What? He's robbing me? All right, I'll keep going. I leave, I go to Trinidad, I start a new life. This is probably my season, my chapter. I'll apply for my pension. I've served honorably. Sure, they'll honor it, but they don't. I'll keep going. I have no toes. I need a cane to walk. Literally standing upright and balancing is an act and shift of energy. In the late 1800s, as a woman, I'll keep going. She went until she couldn't anymore. And in my work, because all of my exhibits are historically based and inspired, I really try to give the women I celebrate some version of joy and quality of life that they did not have in life. And that is what we did with the Sister Soldier exhibit. You've heard my story, you've heard Cathay's story, you've heard some striking similarities of navigating proposed narratives and disability and energy and all the things. And that brings me to random sirens outside, but also our shared history. And what I really want to leave with you today is encouragement. Because yes, I've just shared two very heavy stories from people you did not know, although you see me now in the flesh. But one of the reasons I am so optimistic about life in general, even before the hand that I have been dealt, is the knowledge that we all have something. You may not be going blind in real time, but you have something. Illness, loss of life, coming through a divorce, a season, a situation, a pandemic. We've all got something. So you don't have to wait for a diagnosis or a shift of season to choose to show up. And the fact that you're in this room on a beautiful, gorgeous Saturday in Colorado before all the world turns to snow next week means that you care about women deeply, and you care about history deeply, and you care about shared history. And I want to submit that if we're going to move forward and survive this next season, all of us, we are going to have to really be very intentional about honoring the notion that Black history is American history and that shared history is what connects us. It is not our political views or our belief system. It is our humanity and the knowledge that we are all physically here that should give us a sense of encouragement. And we should all, no matter our ethnic experience or origin, have a measure of hope. Why? Because your ancestors had great hope. I know we've all seen the documentaries on PBS and they're extraordinary. It doesn't look that way. But they had hope. And how do I know this? Because we are here. You know that your ancestors had hope because we are here. And with the same tenacity that Cathay kept going, think of your grandmothers and great-grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers. There are literally people that in your bloodline that you will never know, but they were propelled by the hope of you. And it is up to you to leverage that hope to shift energy, to create community, to have sessions that talk and share conversation and stories, to do the research, because I submit to you that this gathering, this beautiful gathering, this research and the work they're doing here at History Colorado is the beautiful resistance. When I was coming up, my grandfather was a Baptist preacher of a very large church in Louisiana. He was also a civil rights leader. When MLK came to Louisiana, he actually came to my family's church. My grandfather and grandmother filed a suit to desegregate Caddo Parish, which is North Louisiana. My mom was our region's Ruby Bridges. She's here with me today. Mom? At the age of 5, she entered Creswell Elementary School, and for the whole first year, she thought the N-word was her nickname. Stories skip, but they recur if we don't share the truth. Fast forward 20 plus years, I'm in elementary school at Allison Air Force Base in Alaska because my stepdad was in the military. And I come home and I tell my mom, I had the best first day. You'll never guess what happened. I made a new friend named Andy and I have a new nickname. But mom stops, it looks, comes around the counter from the kitchen and says, you don't have a nickname. Oh, but I do. Andy gave it to me and she said it was mine. What is your nickname? And I say the N-word, and the tears roll down my mother's face. She ushers me into the living room to watch television with my brother, and then she calls my stepdad and says, call the principal, we're gonna have a conversation. What I did not know was, at the same age, years ago, she had her own experiences that lasted years around segregation. It is important to share these stories because these stories ensure our freedom and our liberation. And with the same energy, love, and passion that we used to sing beautiful Negro spirituals in my church growing up, I'd like to close today by inviting my beautiful mother, Carolyn Jones Sullivan, a playwright and jazz vocalist, to the stage to sing one brief verse of one of our favorite Negro spirituals.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Since I lay my burdens down. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Since I lay my burdens down, I feel better, so much better, since I laid my burdens down. I feel better, so much better, since I laid my burdens down.
Good job. We're celebrating women today. If my daughter Zoe will stand up, she's 7 years old. And I want to encourage you to be encouraged, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, and whatever your belief system, be encouraged and do what you got to do to stay well, because we have lots of beautiful work ahead. It's the call. Thank you all so much.